Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and let's build a list. That's right, we're going to go over some Tactica. These few videos will be focused on Tyranids because, well, they are by far my favorite army. I've played Tyranids and Necrons, I've also dabbled in some other ones, and I've played against a lot of armies, and still, even though they're not the most powerful army out there, they are my favorite. Both playstyle, flexibility, their lore, everything is just a lot of fun. So we are going to do a few videos that are going to show you a few different lists at the 1,750 point level. Now, why do I choose that level? Because it's a standardish tournament size. I know some tournaments will be 2,000, some will be 1,850, some will have 1,500. But all you have to realize is that when I show you these lists, that you can totally adjust them to your needs. First off, you got to adjust them to the models that you have, and the second, you have to adjust them according to what kind of players you're up against. If you know you're up against Necrons all the time, then you need to adjust it to that. And yes, list tailoring is okay, as long as you're not like, show me your entire army, and then I'm going to create an army that goes against it. Unless they always beat you, in which case you should do that. Anyways, back to this. Realize just a couple things. One, because these are general lists, you're going to want to make small changes according to the points. Like, for example, I might say bring this, but if you're like, well, I'd rather bring this model than that one because I like it, that is perfectly fine. And two, I want your feedback. So go ahead and in the comments below, post what you think about these lists. What could be done better, what you think isn't good, what you think is good. You guys can argue amongst yourselves what is best, because guess what? That's where we learn about Tactica. When we see different players show their experiences, and then we're all able to learn. So let's go ahead and start with, we're gonna do about 3 videos to show you some standard lists that I like to do, and then we might do some other ones to show some maybe a bit of crazy lists or specialized lists. We're gonna start off by taking a look at an anti-infantry list. So this army is very close combat oriented and will not do very well against a heavily mechanized or of course a heavy flyer list. But against most other armies such as orcs or even space marines who aren't heavily mechanized, or pretty much any other army that doesn't have a lot of tanks, this will do very well. What we're focusing on here is swarms of close combat models. So let's take a look at what we have. We have 2 HQ choices. We have 2 Tervagons. Now, these are Carnifexes converted to be Tervagons, but they still do the trick. Now with my Tervagons, I always, unless we're doing a small points value, I'm always going to give them Crushing Claws, Adrenal Glands, and Toxin Sacs. Adrenal Glands give them Furious Charge, and Toxin Sacs give them Poison, but more importantly, they grant that to any Termagants within 6 inches. I always give them Crushing Claws because Tervagons are already Initiative 1, so the Crushing Claws make your monstrous creature Initiative 1, but then it gets plus D3 attacks. And so if they do smash attacks, where they double their strength, they get that plus D3 after you have the attacks. So it gives them a lot of really good tank busting capabilities or insta-killing capabilities as well. Now the whole basis of this army is cover. So we've got Hormagaunts all out front. They are all upgraded with Toxin Sacs. In this particular army we have 2 groups of 20 and a group of 15, but of course you can adjust it according to other things you want to do. And then backing them up are 3 groups of 10 Gene Stealers. I happen to have a Broodlord with one of them, but whether you bring Broodlords or not is up to you. I like the Psychic stuff in 6th edition, so I like as many Psychers as possible. And the Tervagons, I've also upgraded with a 3rd Psychic power, and then I give them the Biomancy powers from the rulebook because they're just awesome. So here you have Venomthropes, who are going to give a 5+ cover save to anybody within 6 inches, and it's actually any unit. So these Hormagaunts, this entire Hormagaunt group, and this Hormagaunt group, and this Hormagaunt group, in fact everything on the board, except the Doom of Malantite, which we'll talk about in a second, will automatically get a 5+ cover. The Gene Stealers are of course screened in the back, just in case they're not close to a Venomthrope, they'll get the 5+ cover from the Hormagaunts out front. And the Toxin Sacs, the reason I like to give those, the Hormagaunts is obvious because they're strength 3, so being able to wound anything on a 4+ is awesome. But the Gene Stealers, since they're already strength 4, a lot of things they're going to go up against, they're going to get the reroll from the poison that the Toxin Sacs gives them. And so that's the basic strategy. Move up, screening the Gene Stealers. If the army decides to target down the Gene Stealers, then the Hormagaunts can do the job. If they target down the Hormagaunts, then the Gene Stealers can do the job. And then we throw in a Doom of Malantite. Now he's not necessarily a key component to this army, but I wanted to talk about him because he can be a key component to any army. The Doom of Malantite almost always makes back more than twice his points in killing guys or harassing, as he comes down in a spore pod, always bringing him in a spore pod, of course, forcing leadership checks and killing things in the enemy shooting phase. He does all sorts of awesome things. I always let him keep his own powers and never give him the psychic powers from 6th edition. So he's a good addition to any army. So that is basically, this is a very straightforward list to bring. A couple variations that I do is I will often swap out the Gene Stealers for Termagants. And I'll put the Termagants out front and the Hormagaunts behind them. And I might even bring another Tervagon or two on top of that. But we're gonna do a heavy Tervagon list in another video. And the reason I might bring Termagants instead is because they'll benefit from the toxin sacs and adrenal glands of the Tervagons, and because I can bring a lot of them. Because as opposed to the Gene Stealers, who range from 15 to 25 points based on their upgrades, the Termagants are base 5. In fact, I don't upgrade them at all usually, unless I'm going for a very heavy shooty army, in which case I can bring 3 times as many Termagants as I can Gene Stealers. So that's a fun one as well. But I almost always like to bring Hormagaunts if I'm going for a heavy infantry base list. Now, like I said, this won't do very well against mechanized lists, so stay tuned for more Let's Build a List, where we'll try to create anti-mech, we'll try to create anti-space marine, and we'll just see what else we can do with the Tyranid Codex.